It's finally here. The Altmill from CNC Labs is shipping. But why is this CNC machine causing so much excitement in the community? Or maybe you have a different perspective and don't understand why somebody would be excited about the Altmill. Ever since the announcement, this has been the highest requested CNC for me to review here on the channel. Let me show you what makes this CNC machine special. These are my first impressions. The Altmill is the newest and cheapest option in the 4x4 hobby CNC router space. It's around $2,000 less than the competition, making it incredibly hard to ignore. I was provided this machine free for review, but if I were to have paid for it, it would have been $3,678.99 shipped to my house all the way from Canada at the time of filming this video. You can order this machine, stand, spindle, and dust boot all directly from CNC Labs. In fact, the Altmill comes with a stand no matter if you want it or not. But you don't have to use the stand if you'd rather make your own. And if you're considering ordering one, using the link in the description of this video directly supports the channel, and using that link can also get you some cool discounts and files, but more on that at the end of this video. Assembly was straightforward, and all the tools needed were supplied by CNC Labs. It took me a total of 6 hours to fully put it together by myself with no help, which is also why I didn't film that process, because it was a little bit stressful, but in the end, I got it all together. It comes with drag chains, and everything was very well documented in the assembly instructions with simple steps, pictures, and even GIFs showing how everything goes together. The Altmill comes with an 80mm spindle mount, meaning you can't use a Makita or a similar palm router with the Altmill unless you use a mount reducer, but those can easily be 3D printed or ordered off of Etsy. The 80mm spindle offered by CNC Labs is currently only available in one option, an air-cooled ER26 collet 1.5 kilowatt 110 volt, which means that you can use a regular wall outlet to power your spindle. It uses bits or tooling that are 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, and 3/8 inch in diameter, but not 1/2 inch. I've found that the spindle is plenty strong. Besides it being wired backwards on arrival, I've had no operational issues with it specifically. Thankfully, correcting the issues was just switching 2 wires in the VFD, which was very well documented in the assembly instructions. A combination of closed loop stepper motors and ball screws work together to create reliably accurate movement, all controlled by CNC Labs' Super Longboard, which they have designed and support in-house. The Super Longboard requires a computer hooked up to run G-Sender, which is the deceptively capable program that displays everything that you need to run your CNC machine. It remembers your zero if a crash occurs, gives job time estimations, can fully change your feeds and speeds on the fly, supports gamepad jogging, gives real-time renders of your cuts, and a ton more. The Altmill is capable of cutting a wide variety of materials, but most commonly cut is going to be wood, plastic, and non-ferrous metals, like aluminum, brass, and copper. It's sold as a 48x48 machine, but it is capable of cutting 49 inches by 49 inches. And it has a Z-travel of 5.5 inches, but depending on your wasteboard, that could vary a little bit. Currently, you can only get the Altmill in the 4x4 configuration, but they've recently released a video showing a smaller 2x4 unit being tested due to customer request for a smaller footprint machine without losing any of their robust capabilities. Shortly after setting up this machine, I ran into some movement issues, and after troubleshooting multiple areas, I found that I had over-tightened some of the couplers, and it was smooth sailing on my first project on the Altmill. I went ahead and cut out this man in the moon, and that is going to be one of the files for all of you CNC With Me members. If you're not a member of CNC With Me, go ahead and check out cncwithme.com. Now, my second project is where I started running into a ton of issues with this machine in particular. I thought I had figured things out with all the tension for the ball screws and the couplers and where everything mounted up together, but it turns out that I didn't. When I first saw the machine, I knew that down there was going to be the perfect place to set up our lumber rack, which, as you can see, we ended up fully being able to cut out. But after 5 attempts of resetting the machine, hitting the E-stop, setting everything back up, I learned very quickly that it does maintain at zero even after losing power multiple times. But after going back and forth, we finally were able to cut things out, and every single one of those setbacks that occurred was just because of one simple problem. I hadn't installed the latest drivers for G-Sender on my computer, and once all of that was updated, we shut everything back down and then restarted everything. It cut out perfectly, and the machine was running on the same lines that it had cut out the first time before it had stopped in the first place. The cost for the entirety of the lumber rack was around $150. Obviously, I was a little bit bougie on mine, and I used walnut veneered plywood. You definitely don't have to do that, but just 1/2 inch plywood, some 2x4s, and some screws, and you can have this thing set up in an afternoon. As you can see right here, I did have a little bit of help setting up everything with the 2x4s, but the bolts and all the material that I used will be linked down in the description of this video. Now that we've gone over the overview of this machine and what it is capable of, let's really talk about my likes and dislikes about this machine. because there is a lot to go over. And I know that a lot of y'all are very interested in how this actually stacks up against the Onefinity Elite. I'm sure that some of y'all have already hit the comment section talking about that. And that's something that I am very much looking forward to hearing about, because I'm going to be having a complete comparison video on this versus my Onefinity Elite Foreman, and that's going to come out on Black Friday. So if you're opinionated about this, if you think it's better than the Onefinity, let me know down in the comments. If you think that the Onefinity is better, let me know down in the comments, because whatever you say actually could make it into that video. Go ahead and subscribe if you're interested. Here are 34 things that I like and do not like about the Altmill. So the legs are free, and you can't not buy them, so they're free, and I think that's incredible. The legs are wobbly. Not saying that they're not stable by themselves, but they shake a bit. Now, the legs have a place for a lumber rack, which is also massively huge. You can just slap some 2x4s in there, and I love the fact that they just cut the holes ready to be screwed into, and that does shore that thing up so much more. If you get an Altmill 100%, put some type of a lumber rack underneath it. It's kind of like putting weight onto a wood lathe. It's just something that I feel like you should be doing with any hobby CNC, especially a 4x4 like this. The zeroing process is something that I did not enjoy. Having things hooked up to a computer, you're going to hear me down on the fact that I have to hook up to a computer a lot during this segment, but I just didn't really enjoy it. I think that it's a great machine, it's a great software. The process of a USB cable between the two, no bueno. Don't like that. All right, so customer service. This is one thing that I'm a little bit jaded on because I have a YouTube channel, therefore I think that I might get a little bit of preferential treatment. So in order to show y'all if the customer service is actually any good, I got my two best friends to come down, and they sent off some secretive emails to CNC Labs as well as to Onefinity.
Yeah, thanks for paying for my first class ticket to fly down here just to read this email. That was really great.
And for a steak dinner tonight. And for Venmo me all that money.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be showing all of that in the Black Friday video of Altmill versus Onefinity. All those results are already in. Nothing can change. I'm excited to show y'all. So the assembly process. I have mentioned a lot here on the channel that I really don't want the machine working depending on my ability to put it together. Therefore, a lot of the issues that I ran into specifically with this machine at the very beginning was because of the assembly process and my inability to be able to do it correctly. Yeah, I didn't enjoy that. 6 hours by myself though. I thought that was a lot quicker than it actually was going to be. Assembly instructions on the other side, they are so clear. They guide you through every single step. And yes, I didn't tighten some of the screws correctly, but everything is incredibly clear, and they even include like GIFs of like how things should move and everything. It was very well thought out. Whoever put that together, kudos. You did a great job. Cable management. This looks like an absolute nightmare. The cables that are coming off through the left side that go right down to the controller, there should be some type of a 3D printed part that snaps on right there. They're just kind of all hanging out. And then underneath the machine, I feel like I did a really, really good job of cable management because I knew I was putting a lumber rack down there, and it still looks really bad. So yeah. 3D printed cable management clips. It came with a bunch of these little clips, and this is a good thing because they fit perfectly in the aluminum extrusions underneath the tabletop. And I cannot tell you enough how satisfying it was to be able to snap those things in and then use zip ties. The Altmill relies heavily on your ability to use zip ties around it, and they do make things a lot nicer and a lot tidier and I guess a lot cheaper. It's kind of their whole thing is just making things as accessible as possible. When you make things accessible, they might not be the prettiest or the tidiest, but they work. So 120-day warranty. I put this on the don't likes because a lot of people buy a CNC machine because of all the hype, and then it gets to them. With this, I think they've got like 4-month lead on these machines, maybe 2 months, but it's a long time. By the time the machine shows up, then you have another 4 months to be able to tell them if something's not working or just to be able to get it back to them. Obviously, if you get the machine, you don't like it, there's not just a free return policy. You have to pay to get it back to them all the way to Canada, this, that, and the other, but it's 120 days. I understand why they do that. I'm not knocking it too hard, but that is something to know if you're looking to buy one of these machines. Shipping and packaging, top notch. The packaging was incredible. Everything was secure. I did have some like punches through the actual cardboard boxes through the shipping process, and nothing was harmed. I was so pleased with how quickly it showed up to my house as well as the packaging. And I didn't have to pay anything to like UPS or import fees or anything like that. They send out some emails and they mentioned that you could end up having to pay for something like that. I never had to. So this next one I think is gonna give me some backlash. I've got, it says computer, it makes it a toy and not a tool. And that's kind of just my feelings about hooking a computer up to this system. You have this incredibly robust machine, you've got this very custom made controller, and then you have to hook your computer up to it. And the whole process just makes it feel like It's a toy rather than a tool, and I'm very, very spoiled by the other machines that I've had in the shop and how I'm very used to using those things. So I get that they're saving a lot of money by doing this. For some people, the money savings is going to be worth it, and for other people, they would rather pay a little bit of money. But right now, I've got to hook up my computer, and I do not like that. Yeah, panel computer, it's coming out. And they've been working really hard behind the scenes to make sure that is available. There's a whole lot of things with like Windows licenses and everything, but you can tell they're trying to make it as available and as cheap as possible for the end user, which I really appreciate. So I think that that's going to solve a lot of it. I really hope that it makes the whole setup process a lot snappier too when you're turning on your machine. So you can't tear it down easy. That's something that I'll bring up in the Versus video a whole lot more, but this machine is set up and I'm never tearing it down again. Of course, if you wanted to take it apart, you could, but ugh. So you get to order everything from one place, and that's something we're going to dive into in a second about the pricing. I showed a little graphic earlier, and we're going to dive into that. Besides your computer and the dust collection, but when it comes to the actual machine, spindle, dust boot, and stand, if you order all that from one place, it's all supported by one place. That's really cool. All right, so the motors and the wires are not protected. I made my wasteboard extra long so that it butts up against the wall so that there's just like a nice air cushion between the actual motors and the wall. If you don't build a very heavy base underneath your machine, there's a chance that as you're cutting, as it's moving around very quickly, that it's going to rock that machine back and forth and the motors could punch into the wall. So in order to save that, I went ahead and made my wasteboard as long as possible with the machine, and it butts up against into the wall so that physically those motors could never hit the wall. I will say that in order to do that, the MDF that I ordered was 5 foot by 10 foot, which is absolutely massive. I don't like how exposed the motors and the wires are. So low sides, this is something that I would have never thought about unless I used multiple machines. The sides of this machine are incredibly low, meaning that you have equal access from the front as from the sides. It's a small thing, but it's something that is worth noting. I really like how low the sides are. The spindle came wired backwards. It spun backwards. When I turned it on, it spun backwards. So they've got documentation. It was an easy fix, but it was something worth noting. It came wired backwards. I love that it homes to the back left. Other machines, you can easily set this up and make it happen, but out of the box, it homes to the back left. And after having other machines that have homed to the front left for so long, it just made sense. It feels very clear and open. I like it a whole lot. That's a preference thing, but all these are preference things. So the dust boot, it comes with the spindle. It's very interesting. I'm so glad that it comes with a spindle, first and foremost. Not everybody has the luxury that I do where people send their dust boots to me in order for review, so I've got a ton of them around the shop. And this one came with the spindle, and I was really excited because I thought that it was going to work perfectly, and I'm sure that it will for a lot of y'all, but for me, it's just an extra step and some extra little parts that I've got to move around. The dust boot that I ended up using is called the Nighthawk. I love it, and for so many reasons, but it's just way more user-friendly than this is, but this one comes with your spindle. I would use this one as long as possible. I think it's very innovative. I just think that the other dust boot that I have is easier to use, and I have access to it. Okay, so the actual cutting area is 49 by 49, meaning that you can actually cut a full 4-foot circle. And for some people, they really need it to cut 4, and this will actually cut 4. That's great. I've got drag chain retainers. This is a small gripe, I will admit, but the drag chains are perfect. They work so well, but they do move around slightly. And I put down some little like cable management adhesive clips just on the outside of those so they do retain them so they don't move around very much. It was a simple fix, but worth mentioning. The rail cover. So when you open up your Altmill for the first time and you start and pull out all of these different pieces, you get these two flimsy, long, sword-like pieces. And you're like, what is that for? And then later, they're like, hey, pull off the film, and it's so shiny and beautiful. And you actually slap it down on the machine, and you see that it is a dust cover for the ball screws on the side, and it's also where the drag chain lands onto. It is so well done, and I know it's a small detail, but I am not at all worried about dust getting into the ball screw because of those things, and whew, that's a great one. It's a green. The power switch on the super longboard feels like a toy. It feels like I'm turning on a remote control car. It feels like it's something that I'm going to break, and it's going to get jammed up with dust. Is not going to last very long. So in order for me to never have to worry about that, I send all of my power cables to a very industrial surge protector. It's worked out fine. I don't have any problems with it, but I never have to touch that little tiny power button thing. Joypad and Xbox controller compatible. You can move this machine in a variety of ways. So when you set up things and you plug your computer into it, If you have a touchscreen, you can use the touchscreen. If you have a mouse, you go ahead and click the buttons that are on the screen through G-Sender to jog your machine around. It's got some preset things that you can move it to the different corners. It works really well. You can also choose the speeds. The other version that you can actually set up is a pendant. It's labeled on the super longboard. I don't know if they sell one through their website or not, but there's some type of a pathway to a pendant, which is a small device that you hold. It's got a dial and you choose the X, Y, and Z. It's like the OG way of moving around CNC machines. But you can also use a joypad or an Xbox controller with this. I will say that it hasn't worked great, but it works. I love that we have the option of the joypad and Xbox controller. What is this guy doing here? Spindle wrenches. You might have been wondering what these wrenches are doing right here. These are the wrenches that come with your spindle. Closed loop stepper motors. Now this is awesomely becoming a normal thing here in the hobby CNC machine level. Your controller is talking to the motors as it's running. It's a lot better. The system is closed, therefore it is sending a signal back and forth, and if it ever gets interrupted, it shuts the machine down. Simple as that. Here's another gripe. So the USB-C cable feels unsecure, and that's just me, but when I plug it into the front, I feel like it's not really like in there. I feel like it's not like super loose, but at the same time, it definitely doesn't feel the same secure connection as like my phone does when I charge it. So I feel like it could, if I hit the cord wrong or something, just fall out, and that's going to absolutely ruin a carve. Speaking of ruining a carve, multiple times I had to reset my machine on a specific carve, and I always remembered the 0. I never could get it to go back to the line of code and start with the spindle to turn on and actually start the whole sequence over again. But when I restarted the program every single time, it did work. Yeah, but I don't really like the USB-C cable. G-Sender. This is a huge positive. I was expecting out of everything coming for G-Sender to be the weak point, and G-Sender has been a huge positive. I love the interface. It is a single page. You can speed things up, slow things down, not only your feeds, but also the speeds of your spindle. As you're controlling everything through G-Sender, it gives you job time estimation. That's really cool. Overall, G-Sender is a huge positive. Wires are loose. As you can see right here, there's some wires that are just out. That happened once, and I was like, okay. And then it happened again, and I was like, fool me twice. The third time I went through and checked all of the wires, and I really made sure they were in. I think that that's going to be a consistent issue until it's fixed. So a second ago, I mentioned job time estimation, and that's something that I really, really like about this machine. But I'm incredibly happy that it has it, so it's definitely not a negative. But the negative was that the job time estimation was a little bit off. It estimated a little bit under 19 minutes, and then it came out a little bit over 19 minutes. So yeah, that's a negative, but overall it's a positive. The company, just CNC Labs in general, it's incredibly hard to spell, but it's really easy to say. And then you go to cnc.com, not cnclabs.com, but then their logos all say CNC Labs. But they have monthly YouTube business updates that I think are really cool. They're incredibly transparent. I know the reason that they do it is to answer a lot of the emails that they're getting, asking questions, but they're cool. Yeah, I like that. Good job. Noise. It's a little bit loud. There, I said it. If you would have had access to the machines that I've had in my shop, and you might be doing a comparison of the two, and you saw that one was louder than the other, you'd say it's a little bit loud. When you're running your machine, does it actually matter? No. I can't think of anything more. It's a really good machine. I think if you get it, you're gonna like it, and you might be getting it because of the price, which is what we should dive into right now. As you can see right here, it is around $2,000 less, configured the exact same. So I know that a lot of y'all are gonna see this list and y'all are gonna point out all the discrepancies. Let me know down in the comments below, because I know that that's not a perfect representation, but I know that is the closest representation to what it actually looks like for somebody to go online and click buttons and things show up to their house and put it together. We're not talking about building your own spindle or building your own table. We're talking about bolting things together that show up at your house, and I think that is the best representation of what that looks like. I will also say that I didn't calculate into this the cost of a computer being on there, because that is very difficult to calculate. But the second that the panel computer is available, that will be put on this list, and I'm assuming that that will make a difference of around $300. but we're talking about $300 rather than the $2,000 difference. I don't think it's any secret that they made this machine as a direct competitor to the Winfinity Elite series. And I hope that y'all will let me down in the comments below if you've disagreed with anything that I've said, or if you feel like something should be represented differently, better, or maybe I blew things out of proportion. I would love to hear that, because I'm going to be using all of this data that I'm gathering from y'all and online and put that all together so that the video that comes out on Black Friday of this year is as good as possible. If the Altmill craps out and it's just a horrible machine, I will be the first person to say, hey, don't spend your money on it. Speaking of which, if you are planning on buying an Altmill, please use my link down below, because it will do two things. Not only will it give the channel a bit of a kickback, which is highly appreciated, but also if you take a screenshot of your order and then send that over to hamilton@cncwithme.com, I will be sending you a very large discount for an annual access membership for CNC with me. This week's file is actually going to be an entire file pack. As you can see right here, we have the man in the moon. This is a massive 4-foot round, and it can be scaled down to the size of your machine if you do not have a machine capable of cutting 4x4. Over here, you can see this very large pumpkin, and although the face is not carved, that's something my wife painted, the actual outline of the pumpkin and all the divots are, and those are going to be in this file pack as well. This is actually larger than 4x4 because it is cut on a diagonal. And before we get to the mini pumpkins, I also have a very large black cat that I have not had time yet to cut out and paint, so it is not here in this video, but it will be included in the file pack for those of you that are going to be downloading it. Now, when you download the files, these are going to be available in SVG, but these are going to be available in Carveco and Vectric, as well as SVG and DXF, meaning that you can go in and you can go ahead and use these files today. I want to make sure that the Carveco and Vectric files were not massive 4x4 pieces that only a certain amount of CNC with me members can actually use. So no matter the size machine that you have, you can cut out those pumpkins. Those are a really fun project. All you have to have is 1/2-inch material. It doesn't matter if it's MDF or plywood. We already have members who have Altmills, and I think that's kind of the only reason that I got an Altmill in the first place, because one of y'all actually sent an email over to them telling them that they should send me a machine, and it got the door open and a conversation started that resulted in all of this. So I am very thankful for CNC Labs for sending that out, for trusting me. If y'all remember, about a year ago, I have this to say. If anybody else has a machine out there that they genuinely think is better than this, send it to me. I'd love to review it. I would love just to see if it exists, because personally right now, today, I do not think it exists. And they didn't back down from that challenge at all. So I'm very glad that it's in the shop, and I'm happy to be able to put it up against the Winfinity. I'm really excited to see what the results are, because I don't even know right now, but regardless, we will all find out on Black Friday of this year. To all that to say, I will see y'all next Friday. Goodbye.